So how many times do you think you visited? Like after that, how often were you back in Japan?
Then the second time I went in '89, and I went for 6 months. Then I wasn't living in the dojo, but I was training a lot. And Chida Sensei said to me, "You want to train with the police?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So I was training with the police and with the normal classes, um, and I was training a lot in '89. And for me, I think that's when I made the biggest strides in my Aikido in 1989. And then 93, I went back and I did my Godan. And then every 1 or 2 years, I'd go back to Japan for varying lengths of time.
Would you say that was the golden age around the 80s and 90s there?
Yes. I think other people might have said that the time when Kushida Sensei and Inoue Sensei were teaching in the dojo, that was the golden age. But from my perspective and my experience, 80s and 90s were the golden age. The late 80s and the early 90s, that was the golden age. And then it started to change a little bit. But, change is not always bad, but it started to change. Yeah. But, Stan Pranin called the 80s and 90s the golden age of the Yoshinkan. And from my experience, yeah, I'd have to agree. But I think, I want to interview Kimeda Sensei, and I want to talk to him about the people who shaped the Yoshinkan, people like Kushida Sensei, Inoue Sensei, Yagi Sensei, Takeno Sensei. Kimeda Sensei got a wealth of knowledge, so I hope that will be interesting.
You left the Yoshinkan in 2010?
Yes.
What led to that decision?
In 2007, 2008, Shioda Gozo Kancho's son came back in. And I have two regrets. He came back in and he took over, and he kicked out Inoue Sensei and Chida Sensei. I'm telling it the way I see it. If people have problems with this, then that's fine, right? But I'm telling it the way I see it, because Shioda Yasuhisa spoke to me personally about this, and his version of events vary differently from everyone else's. Anyway, so he kicked them out. I'm condensing what happened, and my regret was, one, I didn't take up a petition with all the international dojos and show him our displeasure. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was I stayed on for another 2 years. I guess I thought I'd give the man a go, see what he was, but he was, speaking honestly, he was not a nice man. And no one will say this. He had no redeeming qualities whatsoever. I'll say it openly, I got nothing to lose. I spent 10 days with the man in the Philippines. We were making a movie. I was a bad guy. I was an extra. And so I know what I'm talking about. There's other people who will back me up on this. I'm not mentioning names because they're still in the Yoshinkan. That man single-handedly, Shioda Yasuhisa single-handedly destroyed the Yoshinkan. And it is to my eternal regret that I didn't do something about it.
Could you be tempted to go back? I mean, he's not there.
I was, but I had overtures to come back, and I seriously contemplated it, thought about it, but I decided to stay with Inoue Sensei. And when Inoue Sensei passed, I looked at the Yoshinkan and I thought, no, I can't go back, because Inoue Sensei made me promise two things. One was that I would keep how we move in and out of Kamai the way he taught it, which is a little bit different from Yoshinkan. Again, not a big thing, but it's something that I promised I would stay with. And two, he said that I had to keep the timelines that he set for downgrades. And it's changed in the Yoshinkan. It's also been relaxed a little bit. Again, I can compromise on those, and But I guess I would question the current leadership of the Yoshinkan, but I don't know who the leadership are. So
that ship has sailed essentially because everything's changed.
Yeah, look, there's people of quality who want to bring the Yoshinkan back together, and if I can help, I will. But still, I'm not going to shut my mouth. I can and I will if I, but the days of just being compliant and being quiet in the face of injustice, no, I won't do that. I will speak my mind, and if it progresses without me, hopefully by speaking my mind, I've contributed to it. If I can be a part of it, I would like to.
Well, I think it's admirable that you don't shy away from talking about these things, and I think that
I have in the past, but I think it doesn't serve anyone's purpose to shy away from this. And mind you, Phil, I've been diplomatic. There's a lot that I could say, and I've chosen my words carefully.
Okay, we'll take that off camera.
But people talk about politics in martial arts to the detriment, like it's destroying martial arts. It is just human nature, and it's a bad word, but it's always been there.
Yeah.
In handing out downgrades, it's always been there, unfortunately.
Can you just very quickly tell me the difference between the way you go into Kamae and Hombu Dojo? Going to Kamae.
Okay, so I have to get up and do it. Look, the Yoshinkan Hombu Dojo goes into Kamae, and then when they want to change, they go feet together and then switch. In Inoue Sensei's way is, if I want to switch, I just slide into the left.
Okay.
So now it seems like a small thing, right? But the distance we're looking at is 6 feet or 2 meters when you're in Kamae. That's the sword distance. Okay. So when you, I won't talk about swordsmanship, but the thing is that that's a distance where we're both endangering each other's lives. Okay, that's 6 feet distance, 2 meter distance, whatever. One step and I can get to you, right? That is never broken in training. It's only broken when you bow, then you go back. So the mindset is, I got to be spot on all the time. There are other reasons as well, but that's my main reason. So if you do any sword art, if you are in Kamae, you do a technique, you go back, you do the next technique. You don't go put the sword away and come back again each time. You don't do that. So in Aikido too, you don't break that distance. You don't go 4 meters apart, then back to 2, 4, 2. It's that 2 meter distance that's kept all the time. So if you make a mistake, I should jump down your throat. I'm close enough to do it. But if I'm 4 meters away and you make a mistake or you lax,
so you don't break Kamae.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
And mind you, I've seen a lot of good people who will go here and they'll go back, but they don't give you an opening. So whether their hands are in Kamae or down or whatever, they don't give you an opening. But it's about the beginners. It's about the intermediate level that you're trying to teach. It's not that level. Yeah. I mean, anything done well is good.
Now, watching the brilliant, masterful old videos of Gozo Shioda Sensei on YouTube, why does his stuff look so different from everyone else in Aikido?
Honestly?
Of course.
He was a showman. And he liked to entertain people.
Yeah.
That's why his demonstrations are wonderful. But he wasn't just a showman. He was artistically talented. He was a great martial artist, and he was a showman. And we learn from showmen. Right? I don't mean that in a bad way at all. I mean that as a compliment. I wish I could, but also, what he did in demonstrations, if we ever did in a class, he would rip our heads off. He would, when we did Suriyashi, we'd have to have both feet flat on the mat all the time. But you watch his demonstrations, he was on the balls of his feet. He was on his toes all the time. But I'll tell you a story. Draga Sensei, when I used to do Jodo, first thing he ever taught was, when you have a Jo, you don't sling it over here like this. You don't do that. When you have a bokken, you don't swing it around. You hold it like this. This is the only way to hold it, etc., etc. So, first time I ever see Shimizu Sensei in Malaysia, he's got the Jo like this. He's holding it behind his back. He's leaning on it. He's standing on it like a walking stick, right? Which was all we thought. Never do that. Moral of that story is, when you do it for as long as they have, and you're as good as them, the rules don't apply. So when you're Shioda Gozo's level, when you're Narayama Sensei's level, when you're Wada Sensei's level, the rules do not apply.
Excellent.
You know the old thing of Shu Ha Ri, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the epitome of it.
They've thrown away the form. They've moved on. They've surpassed it, and now they create their own.
I will add one thing to that. If you need vindication of throwing it away, if you need someone to say, yes, you're ready to throw it away, you're not. Those people never needed anyone to say, oh, yeah, you're now ready to throw it away. They would say, F you, this is me. And that's an important point. It has to come from here, not from someone else saying, now you're a master teacher, you're at this level. You have to be able to say, hey, yeah, whether it's Daito Ryu or Yoshinkan or Imama Ryu, whatever, it's about you making it your own. When do you make it your own? How do you make it your own? And that's where our training is failing us. In my dojo, when I teach, I'm not in the Yoshinkan anymore, but I teach like how I was taught. Okay, so if I say you turn 135 degrees, you turn 135 degrees, not 136, not 137, 135. Okay, doesn't matter whether the person's 2 meters tall or 1.5 meters tall, you will do the same thing. That's the basics, right? When do you get to experiment, depending on the height, depending on the speed, depending on the pace? You get to experiment when you do jiwaza. You get to experiment after the class, because during the class, you will do what I say. After the class, that's when you get to experiment. That's when you get to make it your own. And if you don't practice the Goshinjutsu, if you don't practice the jiwaza, all those other elements, you don't play around with it, you're never going to make it your own. Forever you're going to be doing Joe Thambu's Aikido, or Robert Mustard's Aikido, or Phil Year's Aikido, right? But when you get to play around with it, that's when you make it your own. And if you take out that play time, everyone's just walking around being a clone of their teacher.
Yeah, 100%.
Here's another thing, and this is a big problem with Yoshinkan Aikido now. And I'm not picking on Yoshinkan Aikido, it's the Aikido I know. Okay? Someone once said to me, if you give a group of prisoners a key, some of it will use it to escape, and some people will put it on the wall and pray to it. The basics is that key. The basics are not the be all and end all. The basics are for you to know your potential and to release your potential to achieve your potential. But most people just get stuck in that box. And they're doing it wrongly anyway. And it doesn't matter, because it's meant to teach you certain things. It's not meant to be the be all and end all. It's a teaching tool. And I'm sure it's the same in Daitoryu. I'm sure it's the same with all arts, all sport. You have to transcend the basics. I still teach basics. I believe in the basics. But we need to transcend them. Otherwise, the art's dead.